everyone, and welcome to A Balanced Life. I'm your host, Dr. Jacquie, and I am always delighted when we have this opportunity to come together. Let me just tell you, there are no shortages of opportunity in this season to get out and about. Now, whether you're choosing to mask up or not, I hope that you are enjoying some vitamin D. Seriously, we come into this space and time where we're taking care of ourselves, we're discovering what it looks like to be balanced, and we're bringing some good friends along with us. Today, our show is going to be nothing short of extraordinary. We're talking about today what it means to live in a world of autism. We begin Autism Month here in April, and let me just say, our guest today will be able to share some insight and tips about the space in which we live. So let's bring in our guests, Dr. Tierini, Charlotte Avery, Stacey Owens, and Carlos Scott. Welcome everyone to A Balanced Life.
Hey, Dr. Jacquie.
Wow, thank you.
I am glad you are here. Hey, Carlos Scott, you are a man among the women today. We are excited that you are here.
I'm honored.
Honored. So let's just start with something light, because I know that as we are all professionals working in a variety of spaces, there are times when we're not certain exactly how to read people. And so as we think about what it looks like for ourselves as professionals to deal with individuals who may fall on the ASD. And for those of you who are joining us, it is the autism spectrum disorder. Now, I have to admit, I have family members who fall into this space, and I was not completely aware of the statistics, which say that there are 1 in 68 children who are diagnosed, but specifically, there are 1 in 42 boys who fall in this space. So when we think about the number of people that are in the world and just how we may be crossing paths with individuals in the store, on our jobs, just wherever we may find ourselves, I want to talk for a second with Stacey, because Stacey, you're an educator and you've been with us before, and I'm glad to have you back.
Thank you.
How are you identifying and recognizing when a student or a child may fall along that spectrum?
You know, we start looking at the onset. So we run a K-8 charter school. So when our students come in, even in kindergarten, we start looking at the developmental needs of the students. Are they progressing at the same rate as their peers? Or anything showing up that, you know, with the communication skills, with their ability to use their fine and gross motor skills? We start as early as kindergarten, and then we listen to our parents to see what insight they may have as, you know, what occurred before you even came into school when you were in the preschool environment, because early identification is key. But we don't like to immediately identify. We start observing at kindergarten, but we don't want to give you the diagnosis too early, because it could be other things that can be developmentally wrong, or just you're just a slow developer. But we try to look at it as soon as we have our first contact with students, so that we can provide the services that's needed.
Thank you for sharing that, because services are a very big part of how children are actually labeled. And I hate to use that term, labeling, because the child can be labeled at a very early age, and it's something that stays along with them. However, children have the capacity to be mainstreamed at any given time in that space. Now, Charlotte, you have 7 lovely little people who you are growing and nurturing, and you are a very big advocate for parents being involved in that space. And after we talk to Charlotte, I really want to have a one-on-one with Carlos Scott. So, Charlotte, tell us about how you advocate for your children.
So, you know, for me, I am that mom. I am the mom that when I sense a problem or whatever, I will call school, I will send an email, I will request a meeting if there are any issues with my children, because, you know, as parents, we are, or we at least should be, our children's biggest advocates. So all of my children know that at any given point in time, if I sense a problem, or if a problem comes to me, they know that, I'm going to, send an email, I'm going to show up at school, like they know. I mean, and I don't do it, in crazy mom form. Like I'm in there, like, not looking whatever they think the typical mom of 7 looks like, but I'm in there, with a suit, with a briefcase, with heels, with makeup, so that they can understand that I'm coming into their school and I mean business when it comes to supporting all of my children. And it's really kind of funny. My children have this running joke because they're like, every school that we're at, my mom, they should just create a parking space for my mom because, at any given time, I have no problem showing up and being there to support and advocate for them in the way that they need to be advocated for. And the reality of it is, I take great pleasure and joy in helping other people advocate for their children because you don't know what you don't know. And so, as I'm advocating for other people's children, I'm going to advocate even that much harder for my own. So, it's just very important for all parents to use their voice and step in for their kids, because one thing that I know is that school is not always right. Administrators are not always right. Parents and students are not always right. And so I believe that everybody should have an opportunity to come to the table and get an understanding.
Thank you for sharing that, because advocacy plays a very big part in who we are. I want to bring in Carlos Scott. Now, Carlos, many of you may have seen him before on CNN. He's been on a variety of shows. He runs a PR firm, but more importantly, he's a father of a son who has autism. Everyone, let's welcome Carlos Scott. Hey, Carlos.
Thank you. How are you doing today, Dr. Jackie?
I am doing well, sir. I'm delighted that you are with us because I watch you and you are an extreme professional. So before we get to talking about your life as a father, tell us a little bit about who you are professionally and what you do.
Oh, yes. Over the last 2 decades, our PR marketing firm has been blessed to represent a very diverse pool of clients, from Olympic gold medalists, Super Bowl champions, Hollywood actors, Grammy Award winning artists, even a 4-star general. And our main specialty is trying to help our clients to grow their brands effectively in a way that is engaging and entertaining, but yet enlightening. And, but as you mentioned, I'm a proud single father raising my son, Isaiah, who just turned 16 and has autism. And every day is a different day. And it's the joy of my life, because how kids with autism are. They don't have a filter. And so it can be very challenging for some who don't know. And so I sometimes have to, let people know, I said, he's very literal. And so whatever is on his mind, that's what he says. But he's not saying that in a way to be derogatory, negative, or agitational. He's just expressing himself. And he's come a long way in that, because he used to be not necessarily nonverbal, but he was pretty much just clung to his mother and myself when he was younger. But around 10 or 11, he just grew out of that. Now I can't get him to stop talking.
Thank you for sharing that information. When we come back after the break, I want to continue this dialogue with Carlos Scott. Oftentimes, fathers have an expectation of what their sons will be. But let me just tell you, Carlos is a man of grace. He also has identified ways to engage his son that really shed light on what it looks like to raise a different able child. When we're back after the break.
It's time to be smart.
Roland Martin's doing this every day.
Oh, no punches!
Thank you, Roland Martin, for always giving voice to the issues.
Look for Roland Martin in the whirlwind, to quote Marcus Garvey again.
The video looks phenomenal, so I'm really excited to see it on my big screen.
Support this man, Black Media. He makes sure that our stories are told.
See, this difference between Black Star Network and Black-owned media and something like CNN.
I got to defer to the brilliance of Dr. Carr and to the brilliance of the Black Star Network.
I am rolling with Roland all the way. Honored to be on a show that you own. A black man owns the show.
Folks, Black Star Network is here.
I'm real revolutionary right now. Roland was amazing on there.
Stay black. I love y'all.
I can't commend you enough about this platform that you've created for us to be able to share who we are, what we're doing in the world, and the impact that we're having.
Let's be smart. Bring your eyeballs home.
You can't be Black-owned media and be scared. You dig?
Welcome back, everybody. I want to bring Carlos back in because you mentioned something, Carlos, that was very intriguing to me. You talked about the stages of development that you identified your child. And, as a single father raising a Black child with autism, at what point did you recognize the role that you needed to play in his life had to become greater?
I planted the seed probably when he was about 7 or 8. I had a conversation with his mother that I would like to, once he got to a certain age, I would love for him to come live with me full time. And it took probably about 3 or 4 years until that to come to fruition. And one day I got a call, I got a text, and then it preceded a call. Do you still want your son? I mean, we kind of joke about it now, but he was just, like I said, he had gone from being a very kind of quiet boy to being to the point where he was like very talkative, and it was borderline at sometimes disrespectful or what have you. And at that point, I just felt like this was the time that I had kind of preset the stage for 3 or 4 years before. And I didn't care what kind of sacrifices I had to make in order to make that happen. Thank God his mother agreed, and it's been going on 5 years this June.
Man, let me just tell you, let me commend you, because oftentimes it's difficult for men to step into that space, because as a father, first I want you to tell us at what age did you begin to identify that your son was on the spectrum? But as a father, how did it make you feel identifying that you would have to probably change? What was in your mind about how you would raise your son?
He was identified early on when he was, I don't think he was in kindergarten, to be perfectly honest. But he also had cerebral palsy as well. So initially, we didn't necessarily know that it was autism per se, as much as we knew that he had his main thing was the cerebral palsy. And then later is when a doctor identified and said, hey, do some more testing, and that's when he was fully diagnosed.
Fully diagnosed. I want to bring in Dr. Tierini along with Dr. Scott, because this conversation that we're having and how parents manage expectations can oftentimes be difficult. Dr. Tierini, tell us a little bit about how do you engage parents to manage expectations? Because life has a way, honestly, of just knocking the wind out of you.
Mm-hmm. Thanks, Dr. Jacquie. That's a conversation that I have with all of my clients. We go through life and we, set these goals and have these dreams, and there's absolutely nothing wrong, with that. But sometimes we can become too locked into what our idea was and our plan and how we saw it, coming to fruition. And, sometimes what's that joke? If you want to make God laugh, tell him your plans. Sometimes God will throw us a curveball, and it's hard. Sometimes it can hurt, but how do we stay flexible in those times? How do we still see that this is good? Things are still good. It just didn't play out the way that we thought it was. And the goal here is to not get in our own way, because when we get so locked into our expectations of what the situation was supposed to be, we can miss all of the beauty, that lies before us. I love what Scott just said in terms of how it's funny to him. He understands his son, and he understands, what he means, that he's taken that time to really connect with him and let go of maybe what his expectations were in terms of what it would be to have a son. And he's looking at his son now through these fresh set of eyes. And every day, he said, every day was an adventure. Every day was an opportunity to see something new, to learn something new. And that's how we should really approach our lives in a holistic way. Every day is an opportunity to discover, to learn something new. Even if it doesn't necessarily play out exactly as we planned, the beauty of life usually is found in things happening in a way that we didn't expect it to.
You are expressing what maturity looks like. And there are times when young parents don't know how to navigate the situation or the hand in which they're dealt. I want to talk to Stacey for just a second, because Stacey, when you're dealing with parents who are coming to terms and understanding what education is going to look like for a child who may be on the spectrum, How is it, bring everybody in because all of you have something valuable to add at this moment to our dialogue. Stacey, when you're talking about, you meet a mom or dad, they're coming in, they've just been told news that they were not expecting. How do you walk them through what an education plan would look like and some of the questions that parents should have when they're talking to administrators and teachers?
So first of all, you want to make sure that, I approach it by helping my parents to become advocates. First, you are the child's first teacher as a parent. So you're going to come to the school with a wealth of information that we may not have about your child. So we start with building relationships first with the parent so that you can use your voice in a way that can be productive for your child. Then we move into the treatment plan, or the IEP is what it's called for us. And with the IEP, we're looking at hearing how can we sync our school environment to the challenges and abilities for your child. So what is it, what triggers, what needs do you have as a parent for your child? And then let's sync that to our school environment. I think what Charlotte said was so key in terms of advocacy for making sure parents have a voice, come to the table with a list of things that it's not necessarily demands, but just a list of priorities that you would like to see happen in school, and understand that teachers are human too. So we have to learn not only about the diagnosis, but we have to also learn about how it works for each child, because each child is different, so just being as detailed as possible so that we can get all the information that would benefit your child in the treatment plan.
Thank you for sharing that information, because oftentimes parents do not seem to know how to articulate what their needs are. They just know that the school is a professional, the daycare is professional, wherever my child is in activities is professional. So how do I, navigate that space? Carlos, when you're thinking about the kinds of people that you want around your son, what do you look for? Because in this space of now we're coming out of the pandemic, and please share with us what was that like, because I know that being indoors oftentimes for children, regardless if you have a diagnosis or not, because even as adults, we were sort of like going crazy. How do you navigate the nuances and subtleties of your son not being able to have the freedom and the flexibility to do some of the things that he would enjoy?
Well, for starters, his first year in high school, he was in dining room high. And so he was adjusting to being at a new school, but 100% virtually. So that was definitely, it was an adjustment for both of us. I mean, there were times when I was literally doing live hits and he's walking across to get some milk. And I'm like, but nonetheless, I really want to take my hat off to his school. They've done a great job, and you said this earlier, that they're professionals. And one of our other colleagues she spoke about the IEP. The IEP is very important because it's like a roadmap to tell us basically, to assess where the child is, but more importantly, where the goals are for that particular year. It was challenging to adjust to being, both of us being home, both virtually, from him working, for me working, and for him doing school. But we got through it, and I have to give my kudos to his school system and especially his teachers, because they were very hands-on. As you said earlier, they're professionals. They do this for a living. I don't teach school for a living, so I listen to whatever advice that they have, and I am a professional in my son. So that if I notice something is going on with him, I bring that to their attention so that they aren't caught off guard. But other than that, it's a pretty smooth sailing process because we work in tandem with one another.
Ooh, talk about tandem. Tandems, You know, collaboration, working in tandem, being in concert is a very big part of anyone's balanced life. So whether you are dealing with a different able child, a child who is on the spectrum, or you yourself may be facing some challenges in this season of coming through this pandemic, it's important that you have people around you who value you, who understand you, and who will give you the space that you need to grow. When we come back after the break, I want to hear from all of our guests about some of the things that they're doing to balance their lives, even in this pandemic. We'll be back after the break.
I'm Deborah Owens, America's Wealth Coach, and my new show, Get Wealthy, focuses on the things that your financial advisor and bank isn't telling you, but you absolutely need to know. So watch Get Wealthy on the Black Star Network.
Welcome back, everyone, to A Balanced Life. I'm your host, Dr. Jacquie, here at Black Star Network. We have been talking about autism. The autism spectrum disorder can affect anyone at any time. You can be diagnosed at any age. We come into this space today of talking to parents, educators, and coaches who are providing guidance and direction in this space. Let's bring in all our guests so that we can have a really robust conversation and dialogue about a few things that may be on our guests' minds. Not only our guests' minds, but also on the minds of our viewers. So when you think about what it looks like to get out into the world, when you think about how you're going to introduce your child or your loved one to other people, I'm going to start with Stacey, because Stacey, there are times that children who are on the spectrum can't be around a lot of people. How do you navigate, or what would you share with our audience about how to start introducing them to other students and new teachers?
So first, it's very important for that relationship piece to be built. So I know for here at my school, we spend a lot of time creating a classroom environment and a school environment that is conducive to diversity. So the more we understand that each of us are unique and different, and we teach the general population to look for the uniquenesses and differences in students, when we bring in a student who may not act the same or look the same or have the same needs as us, then it becomes common. It's not something that stands out. And so that's very important for us.
Now, you mentioned at your school when we talked before the role that emotional wellness plays for your staff. Are your staff emotional about dealing with students who may be different abled? I think it's important that our audience understands what teachers go through when they're planning IEPs, when they're working with students who have differences, because they love them, they care for them, and they want the best for them. But it can also be emotionally draining.
Right. So first of all, you have to remember teachers are human, right? So we approach that by saying, are you aware of your tolerance levels? Are you aware of your biases? We do a lot with connecting to the social justice standards with our staff first, because it starts with awareness. Now, that doesn't make you a bad person, but if you are aware of what triggers you, then now you can know how to approach the adjustments that are necessary. I think it's for an administrator, or from an administrative standpoint, if I have a teacher who we have to identify that might have some triggers or might not be balanced themselves, and some of the assistance that have to be provided to help students that may be triggering to them, if I see that they can't adjust, then we go in and we provide additional support for the teacher as well. And then we also have to know when we have to make the change that might be best for the student. So we like to call our students VIPs. They're the most important person in the room. That's what we're in this job for teaching and learning. So we have to be able to relate to ourselves and others and teach that from a teacher to student perspective and from a student to teacher perspective. And I know that might not be common verse for everyone, but because myself, I had a child that had a disability, not autism, but a disability none the same. And he was in an environment where that just wasn't necessarily the first steps for him, and it was very harmful. So I intentionally, in this environment, try to create a setting that says it's okay for us all to be unique and different. We just have to know and understand it so we can come together and work together as one unit.
Thank you for sharing that. Dr. Tierini, wow, she mentioned a word just now related to being stable. And oftentimes in your work, and you're teaching people how to level up, how to also be professional. As you gauge your clients' effectiveness and ability, how important is it to leave your personal self at the door? You know, you can't bring all your emotions and your triggers and your problems, you know, into the room. So Dr. Tierini, can you share with us how you're engaging your clients to be better at how they engage people outside their world?
Absolutely. Absolutely. So I love what Stacey just said about tolerance levels and biases, just making sure that we're checking our own tolerance levels and biases. And you guys have heard me say, it's not good to try to pour from a dirty cup, you know, and in doing what I do, that's something that it's a minute by minute, hour by hour, day by day thing that I have to make sure that I'm checking my biases. I have to make sure that I'm checking my tolerance levels, and I encourage my clients and coach them to do the same, because as we're, you know, navigating through life, you know, we're interacting with people that are not like us, you know, and we typically tend to gravitate to those that are just like us, but we have coworkers, we have colleagues, we have family members that are completely different from us. And so last week you heard me talking about giving ourselves some grace. Well, an extension of that is, how are we giving other people grace? How are we giving that person grace that might have cut us off in traffic? You know, they may be rushing home to take care of their autistic child. You know, we don't know what people are carrying. We don't know what they're going through. We don't know what it took for them to get to work today, to get their child to school. So what if they may be a little bit late, or, you know, things might not happen as we thought they should? How are we giving them grace, and how are we checking our tolerance levels and our biases so that we can hold space for them, you know, and you don't have to be a coach. You know, that's something that I do in my profession, but you don't have to be a coach to do that. You know, just being human in this world, that's something that we should all give everyone grace for.
Kindness goes a long way. I want to talk to Charlotte for just a second, because as you advocate with your kids being across all the grade levels, middle school, high school, elementary school, you deal with a lot of personalities. How do you balance your engagement with every teacher and every administrator that your child has?
That is a really, really great question, Dr. Jacquie. So, you know, one thing that I have found is, you know, the majority of my children have been through, you know, they're going from elementary school to middle school to high school, and it's all of them through the same schools. And so, you know, one thing that I have to tell teachers, and I have to be mindful of even in being their mom, is all of my children, all 7 of them, have completely different personalities. So sometimes when my children go to school and another teacher, one of their former teachers, has another one of their siblings, I always have to remind them, you know what, you had Lim, but now you have Gabby, and they're 2 completely different people. So you have to adjust your expectation on, you know, whatever the expectation was, or whoever Lim was in that particular teacher's class. You know, my other child may not be the same way. And so usually I have to be the voice to come in and say, you know what, other than them being mannerable and polite, loving children, their personalities are all different. How they learn is all different. And, you know, so that not only am I mindful of that, but that their teachers are mindful of it also. And one thing that I wanted to say is, you know, in my life, BC, before children and before I was married, you know, I worked with children who were autistic. And I just wanted to put this plug in for parents who are raising autistic children, is that, you know, when you're working with that population, there is a level of, I think people who work with special populations, they have a level of care and and they try to have a level of understanding so that, they can support the parent, because just like Dr. Tierini was saying, you don't know what a parent went through or, what somebody went through before they got to you. And so it is with parents whose children are autistic. They know the issues that their children have. They know the specialties that their children have. And so when you're dealing with and working with parents and you're working in tandem together, it's so important to remember that you don't know what a parent went through to get their autistic child to you. And so like, Dr. Tierini and, Stacey were saying, giving parents grace, giving teachers grace, giving everybody grace. It's just so very important.
Grace plays a very big part in everything that we do. Carlos, how do you balance all that you do as a working father, as a single father, as a businessman who is all in the community and working with other clients? How do you balance your life and meet his needs and your needs?
First, as my late grandmother was saying, prayer and supplication. But on a serious note, one of my mentors told me something a long time ago when I was young in the industry and I approached him about balance because I was having a very difficult time, and this was even before I had custody of my son. But he said something very important, and he said the only thing you can do, there'll never be enough hours in a day for you to do everything that you want to do, but there'll always be time for you to do the things that you need to do. And so that's basically how I have a no nonsense approach. I look at my mother, both of them. I had an opportunity to be a part-time military brat with one mom, and then when I moved back to my biological mom, but she was also a single mother. And they just had no nonsense they just got it done. And so I appreciate the applause that people give me, but I don't really look for it. I just, you just have to make time to make time. And so some days are easier than others. Just like the other night, I looked up and it was 8:30 and I didn't take out anything to cook from the freezer. And it was like, oh, wait a minute. And so I had to rush out and get some fast food or whatever. But, some days are better than others, but anything worth having and worth doing is worth trying. And that's basically it. There'll never be the right time to do. You just have to do your best each day because every day is going to look different.
Mm-hmm. Thank you for sharing that. Wow. Anything worth having is worth trying. We're going to go to the break on that note. And when we come back after the break, I want to engage Carlos in a conversation related to relationships, being a single father, having an autistic son. Your life is completely different from a majority of the people in the world today. So when we come back after the break, when is a good time to introduce your children to a significant other? We'll be back after the break.
Pull up a chair, take your seat. The Black Tape with me, Dr. Greg Carr, here on the Black Star Network. Every week, we'll take a deeper dive into the world we're living in. Join the conversation only on the Black Star Network.
Welcome back, everyone. As you can tell, this conversation is extremely stimulating. We've had time to talk about balance. We've talked about education. How do you engage professionals who are working with your children, whether it's their teachers, administrators, whether it's doctors? How do you engage other family members, helping them provide not only the care, but the grace that is needed to advocate and navigate the world in which you live personally? I want to bring back in Carlos Scott, because as a single father, there are some things that we may need to know. Now, let me just say, this conversation that we're about to have, this is not just about having an autistic kid. This is about every person who is out there who is raising a child, trying to figure out when is the good time to introduce your kiddos to someone you may be dating. Carlos Scott, welcome back. I'm not putting you on the spot, but I do think that it's important that you share with men and women. As a single parent, there's a time and a space for that. What are some of the baseline things that need to happen first before you think about bringing someone into your kid's life?
This is a very appropriate and much needed topic, and I appreciate you for giving myself this platform and others to really address it, because it's something that people don't think about. And that is, when do we bring our child to meet, especially our child with special needs, to meet that new person that may be the new love interest? Well, for me, at hello, when I meet someone and we get a chance to dialogue, I express to them in those first 5-10 minutes, I'm a single father raising my son, and he has an autism. So if that's going to be too much for you, then hey, we can continue this cup of coffee or conversation. But if that's going to be too much, then hey, it was nice meeting you. But as it relates to when it gets to meeting that person, that is only once me and that woman, we agreed to then now be in a committed monogamous relationship when we're serious. Now, if we're just casually dating, I'm sorry. And I've had a few women to get kind of upset with me in the past over this, but no, you're not going to meet my son or my mother, for crying out loud, until we figure out what we're doing first. And then once we have established, okay, hey, you see that I am who I said I was, and vice versa. Now we can explore meeting my child, and sometimes she might have a child or children, and so that's the safest and the best time.
The safest and the best time. I love that when you said you're not going to be my mother or my child. And those are two very important people in all of our lives, because you're in that space of saying you might actually become a permanent fixture. And so you want to make certain that that individual has the capacity and the bandwidth to be able to deal with all of what your life looks like. When you think about relationships and dating, what is a day in the life for you like? From getting up in the morning, checking on your son, making sure he's ready, then you have time for a cup of coffee or dinner. What does this look like for you?
Well, it's all about routine. Children with autism are very, very routine oriented. So for me, my priority is to always make sure that Isaiah is on his routine. Anything that I do outside of that extracurriculum is make sure that it doesn't upset his routine. On the weekends, or even sometimes, during the week or whatever, I might actually go to lunch with someone because, hey, he's at school. Or if it's on the weekend, it might be when he's at, one of my relatives or my sister's home or something like that, or what have you. But it's all about making sure that he's got that he has what he needs from me, and resource-wise, whether it's his video games, whatever it is that he needs, and then staying on his schedule. And then I kind of work based upon the availability, of course, of the woman, and make sure that it doesn't, kind of clash with what I got going on for him. But if it does, I just have to make sure that I have, whether it's a babysitter, a relative, or someone, to make sure that he's in safe hands when I am in a dating capacity.
When he's in a dating capacity. Thank you for sharing that information. Stacey, can you join us for a second? Because Carlos mentioned something very interesting. Can you tell Stacey when there are behavioral changes with a child? Maybe the new person has been introduced into the landscape of that child. Is that something that's readily identifiable in the academic file? Stacey, can you tell us, is that something that's really identifiable in the school landscape when someone has come into that child's space?
I think it's very recognizable when the structure or the routine changes. So Carlos is exactly right with that. Structure is key. And whenever the student is taken out of their normal routines, you can see some of the behavioral changes. It's not, you don't necessarily identify quickly to, is this change happening at school or is this a change that's happening in home? But you do see some behavioral changes that will give you that yellow or flashing light that says, look a little closer. And again, that relationship piece with the student and the teacher and the student is very key, because the closer or the more that I know about this individual student, I will be able to recognize when we are about to experience a change or if something is different from their normal interactions. I have a few students that we try to keep them in the general mainstream classrooms, because that's where they can learn those social cues that are very important for students to have. But yes, if we start seeing the behaviors change a little bit, maybe the student was doing well with completing class assignments and now they're not as engaged, or if pacing and rocking or something like that is more triggering for them, you need to stop and pause and say, what's happening? What's going on? If a student can communicate those needs, we need things in place that can help them to communicate it. And if they can't, then as the adult, we have to be able to tap into having conversations with the parent to say, has anything changed at home? Has anything changed here? But identify what is out of sync in that routine, because that's usually how we can stay ahead of it.
So in the social cues that the children bring to the table, you mentioned if the child can speak, which leads me to ask this question, understanding verbal and nonverbal cues. So what are some of the behavioral gestures that are nonverbal that a child may exhibit to help a person who may not necessarily work around a different able child on a regular basis? Is there rocking? Is there pacing? Is there what is the word is there a greater repetition of that movement? Is it more rapid?
Mm-hmm. All of that. It can be stimming. It can be the need to be overstimulated. All of that sort of plays into, and each child is different. I mean, I've had the opportunity to see kids who, if the noise levels are too high, or if something's changed in the structure of the classroom, that they go under the desk seeking a safe space. I've seen them needing to leave out of the classroom. Usually we try to identify what is that student's need and provide those calming areas, or provide an adult. Some of my students may need to come out and talk to another adult when they're overstimulated. But yes, all of those movements, the pacing, the rocking, the fidgeting, are key indicators. Some of it could just be their normal thing that they do, but if it increases or if it's stabilized and then it starts back again, then we know we just need to pay attention to what the child is trying to communicate to us.
Thank you for sharing that, because even as adults, we have a difficult time, communicating what some of our different triggers are. And oftentimes we don't even understand or can know when we are being triggered. Thank you guys for this conversation. When we come back after the break, I want to do a little bit of reflection and then have our guests give us a few tips for navigating their space.
It's time to be smart. When we control our institutions, we win. This is the most important news show on television of any racial background. Y'all put $2, $3, $4, $5, $10, $15, $20, $30 on this and keep this going. What you've done, Roland, since this crisis came out in full bloom. Anybody watching this, tell your friends. Go back and look at the last 2 weeks, especially of Roland Martin Unfiltered. I mean, hell, go back and look at the last 2 days. You've had sitting United States senators today, Klobuchar and Harris. Whatever you have you can bring to Roland Martin Unfiltered to support it, please do, because this information may literally save your life.
Watch Roland Martin Unfiltered daily at 6 p.m. Eastern on YouTube, Facebook, or Periscope, or go to RolandMartinUnfiltered.com. Support the Roland Martin Unfiltered Daily Digital Show by going to RolandMartinUnfiltered.com. Our goal is to get 20,000 of our fans contributing $50 each for the whole year. You can make this possible. RolandMartinUnfiltered.com.
As I think about the conversation and dialogue that we've had today, I am reminded of the importance of giving everyone the room that they need to be themselves. Oftentimes, when children are in an environment when they're younger and someone does not understand who they are and what they're about, it can lead to them becoming very trying. They can be triggered more often. They can become adults who don't really care to be around people for a variety of reasons. And I think that it's important as adults, as we're having this conversation today, that we can look back and maybe do our own self-reflection and introspection to see, have we been around a person who wasn't handled properly as a child? And possibly this is why the way they are as adults. There's a quote that I like that says, "First seek to understand before being understood." And in this space, in the world of autism, where so many people are struggling with mental health, from this pandemic to just everyday life, let us all give ourselves space and grace to excel. When we come back after the break, I want to talk to all of our guests so they can give us a couple of tips about how they are navigating their own mental abilities. That could be from being triggered. It could be falling out of balance. It could just not be completely understanding right now where things are going when we're back after the break.
We're all impacted by the culture, whether we know it or not. From politics to music and entertainment, it's a huge part of our lives, and we're going to talk about it every day right here on The Culture with me, Faraji Muhammad, only on the Black Star Network.
It's time to be smart.
Roland Martin's doing this every day.
Oh, no punches!
Thank you, Roland Martin, for always giving voice to the issues.
Look for Roland Martin in the whirlwind, to quote Marcus Garvey again.
The video looks phenomenal, so I'm really excited to see it on my big screen.
Support this man, Black Media. He makes sure that our stories are told.
See, there's a difference between Black Star Network and Black-owned media and something like CNN.
I got to defer to the brilliance of Dr. Carr and to the brilliance of the Black Star Network.
I am rolling with Roland all the way. Honored to be on a show that you own. A black man owns the show.
Folks, Black Star Network is here.
I'm real revolutionary right now. Roland was amazing on that.
Hey, Black, I love y'all.
I can't commend you enough about this platform that you've created for us to be able to share who we are, what we're doing in the world, and the impact that we're having.
Let's be smart. Bring your eyeballs home.
You can't be Black-owned media and be scared. You dig?
Thank you, everybody. And let me just say, I'm excited for all of our guests who are here as they come back on the screen. I want to ask each of them this one simple question. How are you navigating your own mental health and self-care? I'll start with Charlotte Avery.
So for me, I have this acronym, and it's called Take Space. And for me, SPACE stands for stop, pray, assess, confide, and evaluate. And so for me, that's what I do when I feel like I'm just about to go in a whole nother place, is I take a moment, to stop what I'm doing, remove myself from a situation. I pray about it. I assess the situation. I confess it, that I'm feeling some kind of way. And I confide in another person who can help me, kind of navigate. And then I evaluate what my next steps are going to be. So for me, I take space.
Dr. Tierini.
That's good. That's good. I love that, Charlotte. Take space. I kind of do a combination of what Charlotte was just outlining, but the key point for me is something that you just said, Dr. Jacquie, is that self-care, piece. I make sure that I'm taking that time to reflect and do the things that I need to do to revive and just rejuvenate me. Self-care doesn't have to be expensive. It doesn't have to mean that I go to a spa or spend all this money. It could be something as simple as just taking a walk, reading a book, journaling. That's probably my number one, self-care technique that I practice, but just taking that moment to pause, to think about what it is that I'm walking through. What am I experiencing? What am I feeling? To process that. And just like Charlotte just said, identify what my next steps are going to be to make sure that I'm staying balanced.
Stacey.
I love the way Charlotte explained her take space. For me, I disconnect, and not in a negative way, but I have so many people that are plugged into me that if I feel myself becoming imbalanced, then it's important for me to disconnect and just focus on me. I exercise, I recenter myself, I meditate, and I escape and listen to the music that I love. I love gospel music. So usually in that space, when if I walk into work and gospel music playing, they automatically think, oh, wait a minute, why are you trying to recenter yourself? And it's not necessarily a bad thing. It's just that thing that I have to do because I have to come into the space of the person who can help me best. And I do that through friendships. I try to stay in communion with people. If I need to talk to someone, it's okay. It's okay. I accept the fact that it's now time for me to plug into someone else. And so I have someone in my immediate circle that I can plug into and say, hey, help me to recenter so I won't be pouring from. I love the way the doctor said a dirty cup. I usually say we have to keep our cups full so we can pour into others. But now I'm going to use your dirty cup because you don't want to be pouring from a dirty cup. So I clean my cup by disconnecting and allowing myself that time to just be me in my space.
Carlos.
I love what all the ladies mentioned, and likewise, I don't want to pour from a dirty cup either. But one of the things that I definitely do, and I'm doing a better job of that, is being intentional about taking care of me. And sometimes we have to be what I call reasonably selfish, and whether that means like one of the colleagues just said, whether it's unplugging and turning that phone on silent for even if it's just for 30 minutes, or taking a drive, or I like to cook. So just something that is solely not about anybody else, not about my son, but just about me. And so I think after I do that, I'm in a better place mentally. Spiritually, I'm a man of faith. So anything that I do is always going to be, faith driven as well. But I've learned that it's important for me to take care of me, and that's not a bad thing. And so it is what it is.
Thank you, everyone, for sharing. I pray today that you, our viewing audience, have had an opportunity to glean some tips, some wisdom keys, and some nuggets that will allow you to move into your space, whether you're raising a different able child, whether you yourself are somewhere on the spectrum, or you just really had it up to here with the everyday things in life. Give yourself space and grace to continue to grow. I will say that for me, I'm an unplugger. Literally, my phone is on focus, the shades are down, and I think it's just good for me to reconnect with myself at my core. It is from this space that I am able to not only be replenished, but then I can fill my cup and be able to pour it from a healthy space into other people. Thank you for joining today, A Balanced Life with Dr. Jacquie.